Hey, I'm Susan John, and welcome to Shades of Us, a show that explores multicultural identities and how they intersect. February is a month of love, and love comes in many forms. But one consistent theme in most relationships is that a person's identity influences how they form intimate bonds. We'll take a look at a few of these bonds when we introduce you to some New York City couples. We'll also talk with a researcher who studies how people in general are interacting in these kinds of relationships. We'll tell you more about these guests right after this. We'll take a look at a few of these bonds when we introduce you to some New York City couples. We'll also talk with a researcher who studies how people in general are interacting in these kinds of relationships. We'll tell you more about these guests right after this.
According to Swiss author Alain de Botton, intimacy is the capacity to be rather weird with someone and finding that that's okay with them.
Is there a science to the ways in which people form relationships? How do we connect as humans? Meet a CUNY professor who studies how people are interacting with each other in romantic relationships.
Humans have a fundamental need to belong. We basically hardwired to connect with other people. My name is Cheryl Carmichael. I'm an associate professor of psychology here at Brooklyn College and at the Graduate Center in the Basic and Applied Social Psych program. My area of expertise is relationship science. I study close relationship processes. I ask questions about what's happening between people that contribute to that process. So how are they interacting with each other that helps promote their health and wellness? We don't spend a lot of time and effort teaching people how to have good relationships. Abraham Maslow was a personality psychologist who had a theory about human development. His theory was that we have a hierarchy of needs that he organized into a pyramid. And at the basic level are our needs for safety, food, for love, to feel social connection. Beyond that, we have needs for esteem. So we have needs to feel that we're making a meaningful contribution. And then at the very top of the pyramid are self-actualization needs. This is sort of something that many people, arguably according to Maslow, never achieve, because you have to have all the lower level needs met before you can focus on any of those top of the hierarchy needs. It's not an easy thing for people to do because our societal norms dictate often that, well, you need to have a good job, it needs to be prestigious, you need to make a lot of money. Those may not be the things that actually bring us true joy and fulfillment, but it's sort of hammered into us that those are the things we need to focus on, so it can detract from our ability to sort of ascend up that pyramid and reach self-actualization. We have different expectations of our relationships in modern times than we did historically. We move away from more traditional gender roles of man as breadwinner, woman as homemaker, to situations where women don't necessarily need to rely on men for financial security anymore. But also the expectations that we have from our partner continue to rise up to the very top of Maslow's hierarchy. I no longer want you to love me. I need you to make me my best self. In my research, I use two theoretical frameworks for studying how people connect with each other and relate to each other. One of those is the concept of perceived partner responsiveness. And perceived responsiveness is the extent to which we feel like our close others understand us. Do you get where I'm coming from? That my opinions and thoughts are worthwhile, valid? And so across the different types of research I do, that concept of perceived responsiveness is a thread that weaves through everything. So sometimes we study that in the context of support seeking. So I'm having a problem and I need to turn to my partner for help. How does my partner show me that they understand me, validate me, care for me? How are they responsive? A second major theoretical framework that I use to study relationships is attachment theory. It really originated with the study of infants. The way that our primary caregivers respond to us when we're in the earliest stages of life shape the way we see ourselves, and it shapes the way we see others. It develops these mental models that are carried through life all the way into adulthood. And this shapes the basis for our close relationships with our romantic partners later in life. When a caregiver is consistently non-responsive, it leads us to develop doubts about the dependability of others. And as adults, we start to deny the need for closeness and sort of feel like we'd be better off on our own. We tend to study two major groups. Sometimes we study undergraduate students. We also study couples from the community. We've just been sort of observing what people do naturally. Our research has not necessarily focused on any ethnic differences or anything like that. Rather, we study people from across backgrounds and we look for the generalities that apply to everyone. Fundamentally, humans have certain needs that transcend culture. The way those needs are expressed may be constrained by the cultures in which we're raised because they shape the norms by which we try to express them. I think in our increasingly globalized world, especially in New York City, where we are in a very diverse place, we are able to learn a little bit more about how other cultures do this and develop a more nuanced understanding of how we might share with others and connect with others, even if they're not from the same culture. I think at a fundamental level, we have to remember people have a need to belong and connect. And a lot of that can be resolved through, communication, like figuring out what's going to work for us as a couple.
What does it mean to be half Korean? That's a question one mixed Korean couple explores as they look at the complexities of the subculture and the relationships within. I took a deep dive into this mixed race experience called the Happy Project.
Hello, welcome to the Happy Project podcast.
Hi, my name is Cedric Stout.
I'm Becky White, and I started our YouTube channel, The Happy Project, or in Korean, 혼혈 이야기. When I tell people about The Happy Project, I just say we're experiencing and exploring the mixed Korean experience, both ethnically and culturally. What does that look like? What does that mean?
Today, my guest here is Cedric.
He was our first official interview in 2018.
A kid's one-year birthday party, a Christmas party, and one interview later, this is how we met.
I had just moved to Korea. We had mutual friends, and we went to their son's birthday party. And that's where we met. This girl comes trucking up to me with these cute pigtails, and then she approaches me and says, "You're half Korean, aren't you?" My mother is Korean and my dad is African American. My dad was in the Air Force. He was stationed in New Jersey, and my mom actually met my father in New Jersey. And so she had just immigrated.
My mother's Korean and my father's Caucasian American. I was born in the States, but a military family, so we moved all over the US. It absolutely was our multicultural background that brought us together. In Korea, because society is quite homogenous if you look at first glance. So somebody who looks physically different, you stand out. When it comes to a feeling of belonging as being mixed Korean, I didn't even realize I was missing that. And then when I went to Korea, I went with the intent of being with my people or being with people who look like me. And more than ever, I realized this is never gonna happen. And so it was quite many stages of feeling rejection, of feeling an outsider and all of that. And then kind of coming back full circle and feeling more confident in myself and who I am and where I look, regardless where I am. And then meeting fellow mixed Koreans, it just kind of gives you that extra something, like more extra confidence in who you are.
We automatically just connected with each other because we could relate on so many things. You know, those things that maybe so many people and your friends or people that don't look like you or have your experiences, like those things that they can't understand, Becky was able to understand for me.
What does it look like to be half Korean in Korea?
Surprisingly, some people responded or left comments or said things like, "No one has ever put this into words before, but that's exactly how I feel." And I think that's the thing that caught me first, was realizing maybe I have an ability to take these emotions and experiences and put it into words, because we all feel it, we know it, but how do you communicate it? And that's kind of where it began. And I distinctly remember sitting in the office in the dark by myself, and I thought of Happy Project, because I wanted a word that was friendly enough, embracing enough, not too closed off, because if you have explicitly half Korean, right, then what about the other side? What does that mean?
I'm half black, Becky is half white. And so understandably, especially here in the West, in America, there are big differences and nuances that come with that. I've had the experiences of going into a store and then having the person who owns the store just kind of keep a watch on me and slowly follow me. In Korea, there are many times where we would be out, maybe at a restaurant, or we would be on the subway train going to a particular location, and we would maybe get stares from people. But I would get a certain maybe amount of stares versus Becky, because Becky does look a little bit more like she can blend in, versus me, I just sort of stick out. And so those are those little, I guess, microaggressions that we experience that over time it just kind of builds, and then we would talk about it. And luckily we're able to connect on that, and I'm able to maybe vent out or talk to her, and she, we have our little therapy sessions.
It depends on how old people are and their perception of white Koreans versus black Koreans. And so you could feel it rather than it would be very explicit. In the US, I distinctly remember when I told somebody that I was coming back to the US and we were together, and he saw my picture and he said, people still look down on interracial couples in some places. And I was like, okay, thanks, for the vote of confidence.
Today we thought we'd talk about the things to think about if you're thinking about getting into an interracial or international relationship, or if you're in one right now.
My advice to a young couple that is multicultural or mixed race would be to be open. And what I mean by that is to be open to your partner's perspective, how they're used to living, how they communicate, and just come into the middle and just meet in the middle.
There can be quite a traumatic history behind the first generation of mixed Koreans, especially. And so I'm always really cautious when I ask people like, oh, so where are you from? How did your parents meet and all of this? And a lot of it is quite layered and complicated, but I think it's really valuable to point out also these beautiful love stories and relationships that many people haven't heard about, because of the dark history that can overshadow. So we really celebrate genuine love and relationships that have crossed borders of race and culture and country. That just comes with the territory when we're talking about On the Happy Project.
Born almost 7,000 miles apart, Ernesto and Inga found love in New York City, a place that they now call home, and where their newborn daughter will fully explore her Mexican and Russian heritage.
Okay, yeah, you're giving it to me, thank you. But watch your step, okay? Смотри под ноги. My name is Inga, I'm from Russia, and here in the United States I am since 2009.
My name is Ernesto, I am from Mexico, and this is my daughter Leah. And I've been in the States since the year 2000. I grew up in Veracruz, and when I was 18, I applied for a Fulbright, which is a scholarship from the Department of State. And I came to New York to do my master's in classical music, in violin performance. And I've been playing music and giving concerts all over the world ever since.
I grew up in rural part of Russia, and my both parents are agronomists, so I grew up working in field, in countryside. So eventually I became an agronomist, but to United States I came as an interpreter.
What I remember is that I was performing at a 4th of July party. So you were with this group of Russian girls on the Hudson.
That's right.
And I was with my brothers and with some other Mexican friends. And my brother was dating your roommate. And then out of the corner of my eye, I saw you coming out of the bathroom. And I just went like this. I was, hypnotized by you. And then I ran towards where you were.
and my mom was visiting me as well from Russia, and we went to see fireworks, and we ended up like seeing this Mexican group playing music, and we were like, wow, we want to know about them a little more. So like we just
and we wanted to know more about you also. And that was the beginning. We ended up hanging out most of that evening.
We spent like all day, all night, just like talking, partying with all this big group, and eventually we had breakfast in diner, and we were like, okay, we liked each other, we like, let's exchange numbers. So since then we were like going out together.
Our official anniversary was that day, you know, the 4th of July, 2011. And then, you know, 5 years passed of just dating before we got married. We got married in Jalapa, in Veracruz. We went through 8 more years of immigration, you know, just dealing with the reality of being both immigrants living in the United States. And you know, Leah was born in Brooklyn, so she'll never have to go through that very difficult experience. But for both of us, I think immigration was a defining factor.
Muchas gracias. Qué delicia. Te quedó rico, eh?
We came from different cultures, but that's never been an issue between us. Vice versa, I found it amazing. We learn a lot about each other's countries, and and plus we live in United States, just like it's mix of cultures here, which is amazing.
In my experience, Mexican culture and Russian cultures are very compatible. Also, ideologically, I think we both coincided at a very, very sweet spot because we both believe in the same stuff. We are both very much against war, against this kind of new loss of democracy that the world is experiencing, and we're trying to raise a family in a better world. So I think in those spaces we coincide a lot and we see a path forward. So we are very happy to have found each other and to have coincided at so many intersections, you know, of ideology, of culture, of togetherness. Leah was born in the middle of the pandemic.
Oh gosh, yes. The day when we find out her gender, Ness, I was like FaceTiming with Ness.
She's a pandemial baby, but I think that's gonna make her even stronger. You know, she did get sick with COVID, as did all of us, and she's a survivor and a New Yorker. Any advice for couples attempting a multicultural relationship? I would say you are gonna always have something new and something exciting. You wanna go down? Okay, go down, Suripa. You're always gonna have something exciting and something playful about your spouse.
Love is the common language, and we should always accept that.
Raising a multicultural child in New York City, I think is going to be the most exciting experience ever. Because yo le hablo en español.
Y ya говорю по-русски.
Entonces, hacemos esa combinación. Oye, mira, vamos a jugar con la plastilina.
Давай играть с пластилином.
Estamos jugando. But our common language is still English.
Yeah.
¿Verdad que sí, mi vida? But even more than English, music. I hope that is going to be her window into the world. So I think this is the future, you know, babies in the United States who speak several languages, who are attuned to the cultural realities of our times.
We'll be back after this break.
We first spoke about interracial marriage back in 2019 with Yael Ben-Zion, an artist and author of the book Intermarried. Yael's story takes a look at intermarriage and why people would want to marry someone who's not from their own social group, and the challenges they face. These stories are a reflection of Yael's life, but instead of having them as a self-portraiture, she tries to expand on her own experience and see how other people experience things that are similar or parallel to her own. Around the time of her interview, there were research studies, notably from the Pew Research Center in 2015, on interfaith marriage in the US. It found that 15% of Americans who have married since 2010 have a spouse who is in a different religious group. In contrast, in a 2020 Pew Research study, it found that 25% of US marriages involve couples of different religions. However, this progress could soon be disrupted by judicial backsliding. According to a 2022 19th News Network report, the Supreme Court's conservative majority has overturned Roe v. Wade, the landmark 1973 decision that guaranteed the right to an abortion in a 5-4 decision. The 5 justices who agreed to overrule abortion rights are divided in terms of what that decision will mean for other major civil rights, such as interracial marriage, which is protected by the ruling of Loving v. Virginia in 1967. A landmark case that reversed state laws banning marriage between individuals of different races. The number of interracial marriages as a proportion of new marriages has increased from 3% in 1967 to 19% in 2019. There have been many studies done on interracial marriage through the years, but the subject continues to have a strong impact globally and play a significant part in society's development. You can check out Yael Ben-Zion's book Intermarried at your nearest bookstore.
That's our show. If you want to know more about the guests we've featured, check out our Instagram page at Shades of Us TV and online at tv.cuny.edu. I'm Susan Junn. See you next time on Shades of Us.